Video for Gary Entropy. I've just watched your video about your greenhouse and you've taken all the soil out. And I read the comments and I kind of agree with the person that says don't put that soil back in. If for no other reason, you've put far too much wood ash into that pile. Obviously this is gardening, so there's no definitive anything, but I think if you look out there to the really green fingered thumb armed people, you will find 1 in 50 that says that anything more than just a slight sprinkling of wood ash is too much. Basically, wood ash, fling it. Eggshells, fling them as well, don't put them in the compost. Your plastic bins, fling them as well. You probably can't in Germany, but build something nice yourself. If for no other reason that you'll be invested in it and probably want to learn more about compost and make better compost. That's the only reason. They don't look too bad, but they're not. The whole thing about compost is it's could be considered arty-farty, liberal. It can be considered a living organism in itself. That's what you've got to think of it as a living thing. It's got to be like all things need, well, most things need moisture and warmth. What compost needs is moisture and air. Moisture and air, moisture and air. Without moisture and air, you get a mess. This is why people turn their composts all the time. It's to get more air in there. The compost needs to breathe as much as you do. And it likes a drink as well. So the turning is to get the air in there and to give it the eye to see how moist it is. And it's got to be, you grab a whole load of it and if you give it a squeeze, you'll get a few drips out of it. It won't gush out, but you will get some moisture out of it. It's got to be moist and it's got to have air. And that plastic thing just does not, it's not conducive to you wanting to go in there and tip the whole thing out and tip it all in again. The big windy drums are slightly better because all you have to do is wind them. But basically, those things are too small. Compost. I thought, should I make the video here now inside or go out to my composts and do a thingy, but just off the top of my head as a quick-ish reply to yours. Okay. Compost is the famous green and brown, and you can go on the interwebs and get compost calculators to calculate how much leaves you need for how much grass trimmings, for how much household waste, for chicken manure or everything. It's all in lists and how much you should mix with one, what or the other, because it's important. But basically, for seeing you coming from such a low base, just think 50-50. It's not right, but it'll at least give you or have more brown than green, because what your poxy little plastic things are probably going to get is just your household waste in, which is predominantly green. It's green, green, green. And what you need is lots of brown leaves, probably in your place. Lots of leaves to mix in with the household waste. And this is why these green plastic things are rubbish, as in crap, because they're too small. For the amount of household waste just household waste you'll put in there, because they're far too small to put your grass clippings in. You can't put enough leaves in there to counteract your household waste. They're just too small. So you need a lot of leaves. And what happens is, and you're asking, is it ready yet to put it into your greenhouse? What you've got is, I've tried not to talk about NP and K in the compost because it's a slightly different thing. But obviously it's gardening and they're all connected. You're a gardener, you know these things anyway. But when talking about putting compost in and is it ready, we're talking NPK. As in, your compost, if you put it in, it's probably going to be fine because it's probably horrible rancid muck because it's got too much household waste in it and not enough leaves in it. But if you've got a big compost pile and you've got lots of leaves and you've kept, got a great stock of leaves, and you try, what the idea is to convert the leaves into compost. And what you need to convert leaves into compost is the nitrogen from the greens. So what can happen, and it won't be the case for you, so I'd say you can put it in no problem, except it's muck, is what often would happen with a sensible size compost pile is that it's still got too much brown in it, and it hasn't had enough green nitrogen in there to break down the brown into good compost. And if you put that half mix, which is which is still too brown, we could call it, what will happen is you put it in there, the organisms have arisen in there that are using the nitrogen from the greens in the compost to make the compost, to make good compost. But if you put that half mix in, it's got the little meanies in there, the little me people that want nitrogen. They're nitrogen eating people. So you'll put it in the greenhouse, and what do your plants generally need to make green growth? Nitrogen. But your compost, if it's too brown, it'll take all the nitrogen from your soil until it's made itself into compost. As soon as it's made itself into compost, then it'll just stop. It stops then. It's a level, it's neutral. It's good compost. It's then humus that's just good at maintaining moisture and good to grow in, but it's neutral in the nitrogen thing. But if you put it in when it's not cooked, when it's too brown, it'll steal all the nitrogen, and your soil will be depleted of nitrogen, so your plants will be depleted of nitrogen. But my guess is your compost bin is over nitrogened anyway. It's over greened from having too much household products in it as opposed to too many leaves in it. So it's perfectly fine to put in there, but it's in no way good compost. Is that enough for the moment? That's enough for the moment. I'll probably have a mental note of this and make a, when the weather turns a bit better and I turn my compost over, I'll have more thinks about compost. And it's a huge subject in itself, compost. But the thing you've got to remember is it can be considered a living organism, and it needs the right balance of stuff in there to live, to get to where it wants to be. And unless you know where it wants to be, which is humus, you can't get it there, because you've got to know what it wants to be in order to give it what it needs to be. It needs to get there. But just throwing things in a plastic bin is effectively a complete waste of time. But it's Germany, so it probably looks very gardeny and neat and tidy, but it's only slightly better than useless.